CLNP. In this video, I'm going to talk about the CLNP or connectionless network protocol. The first question is that why we need to learn about the CLNP. You know that CLNP is one of the addressing protocols of the OSI practical model. And today's we don't use the OSI practical model in our networks. We are using TCP/IP. Why we need to learn about one of the protocols of the OSI protocol model, okay, or OSI protocol suite model. Why we need CLNP? Before learning a protocol, first we should know the importance of that protocols in our learning. The answer is easy, because ISIS now is using CLNP. You know that today's we are using integrated ISIS, okay? Integrated ISIS or dual ISIS is one of the extended versions of the traditional ISIS that we can use it for routing IPv4 and also IPv6, as I mentioned in the previous video. In the integrated ISIS, we need CLNP. You will learn about the reason of it, but in the integrated ISIS, we need CLNP for routing IPv4 and IPv6. Maybe it's surprising to you, but it has some reasons that in the integrated ISIS we should build our topology, okay, because ISIS is one of the link state protocols. We should build our topology with the CLNP addresses, okay. But finally, integrate ISIS or today's ISIS or TCP/IP ISIS can route IPv4 and IPv6. It doesn't have any, for example, importance that in this time we can understand anything, okay? Now only we should know that the reason that we should learn CLNP is that integrated ISIS is using CLNP for building the topology. After that, in the future videos, we will learn why we need the CLNP addresses practically. And after that, for example, in show commands, you will see the CLNP addresses of the routers. Because of that, for now, it's sufficient that, for example, to learn that integrated ISIS or ISIS now is using CLNP for building the topology, but each can route IPv4 and IPv6. This means that today's networks are TCP/IP networks, and in TCP/IP networks, we need to route only IPv4 and IPv6 with integrated ISIS. It's okay. But integrated ISIS inside of the topology needs CLNP. Because of that, first we should know about the CLNP. Okay, let me to talk about the CLNP or connectionless network protocol. You know that in the OSI model we had two types of the CLNP, two types of the protocol addressing protocol. The first is CLNP connectionless network protocol, and the second is the X.2425, that is one of the connection oriented protocols. In this course, we need only to know about the CLNP. Before starting the detail of CLNP, you know that IPv4 has only 32 bits, okay? And IPv6 has 128 bits, okay? Or 16 bytes. CLNP has different, for example, length. It can be, for example, 8-byte length or more than 8-byte length. I will show you how we can understand, we can, for example, analyze the CLNP address. CLNP is not a practical address in today's networks, but because ISIS origin is the OSI, and because of that we should learn a CLNP for learning the ISIS. Because of that, I'm going to talk about the CLNP with some details that maybe you don't need details in the today, for example, configuration of ISIS, but I'm going to talk about more than you need in this course about the CLNP. It's better to you to understand the structure of CLNP, because you can compare it with the for example IPv4 addressing and IPv6 addressing, and this gives to you a chance that for example traveling in the time from the days of the OSI to the days of the TCP IP. CLNP has two for example important part. The first part is IDP and the second part is DSP. CLNP containing two parts, IDP plus DSP. IDP is the abbreviation of the initial domain part, and DSP is the abbreviation of the, for example, domain specific part. What is the IDP? What is the DSP? It's so easy. Okay, let me to write here one CLNP address. CLNP contain two parts, IDP plus DSP. Okay, but what is the IDP? IDP is the initial domain part. It's the identifier of the domain. For example, let me to give you one example. When you are working in one company, okay, maybe you have in that company one initial domain part. For example, the company's initial domain part or IDP can be A. This means that every name in that company should be start with A, and the A is the initial domain part of the or initial domain part code of your company. When I'm working in another company, the initial domain part of my company is B, and all of the names in that company should be start with B. Actually, IDP is the identifier of a address, IDP or initial domain part. But in that for example company, we have many addresses, and that addresses, the real address, are domain specific part of the address. For example, let me to give you one example. You know this example, you know that about the MAC address. Okay, every MAC address has two parts. We call these two parts as OUI or organizationally unique identifier, and then vendor assigned address. Okay, OUI is the identifier of the company IDP. You know that every vendor of the for example products of networks that is using the MAC addresses should use their OUI address. Okay, OUI is a 6 bytes address, and in every product of one company we should use the same OUI. This is the IDP or initial domain part. This identifier can unique the products of this company from other companies, and also in the products of this company we can unique the addresses of the products of this company with vendor assigned address, the next 6 byte of the MAC address. Here we call it DSP, IDP plus DSP. Maybe it's surprising to you about IP address. You know that in days of the for example IPv4 or IPv6, we don't have IDP or DSP with the definition of the CLNP. Look at here, when you are using the IPv4 address of for example 10 or 11.1.1.1, okay, this is the IP address. In this IP address you can't find any identifier, for example, for a company, because this IPv4 can be used in everywhere in every companies in the world. Okay, but in the days of the CLNP, when you had one IP address, one CLNP address, we call them CLNS or connectionless network services, the addressing of the CLNP, the first part of the address is was the identifier of the company. For example, let me to give you one fake example. This is not real. Let me to give you, in company A or in organization A, we used, for example, 12 dot and then other part of addresses. When everybody sees 12, he or she can understand that these addresses are addresses of, for example, that specific company. Or when we are worked in another company, all of the address on that company was started with the, for example, 13. Okay, this means that every addresses in the CLNP world